For nearly 2 centuries, St. Michael's Church stood proudly atop the highest hill in the small coastal town of Valverde. Its stone walls were weathered but strong, and its bell tower could be seen from miles away. Inside, the altar was the church's most cherished treasure. Carved from oak and inlaid with gold leaf, it held a large wooden crucifix that had been there for as long as anyone could remember. The cross stood almost 6 feet tall, with a beautifully carved figure of Christ, his head bowed, his face etched in deep sorrow. For generations, townsfolk had knelt before that cross, praying for healing, protection, and guidance. It was more than just an ornament. It was the beating heart of St. Michael's. Father Gabriel, a gentle priest in his late 50s, had served the parish for over 20 years. He knew every stone, every pew, and every window of the church. But lately, something had been bothering him. During evening prayers, when the sanctuary was quiet, he sometimes heard a faint creaking sound from the altar. At first, he dismissed it as the wood settling with age. But the sound grew more frequent, and there was something unsettling about it, as if it came from deep within the altar itself. One Sunday morning, during Mass, as Father Gabriel raised the chalice for the consecration, he felt an almost imperceptible vibration beneath his feet. The crucifix swayed ever so slightly. He tried not to alarm the congregation, but his eyes darted to the cross more than once. It was the feast of the Exaltation of the Holy Cross, a day the parish celebrated with special reverence. The church was full, with even the side aisles packed. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the floor. The Mass had just reached the homily when it happened. A sudden, sharp cracking sound echoed through the sanctuary. Every head turned toward the altar just in time to see the great crucifix tilt forward. Before Father Gabriel could react, the heavy cross broke free from its mounting and crashed to the floor with a deafening thud. Gasps filled the church. A few people cried out in shock. For a moment, no one moved. The only sound was the faint clatter of a few pieces of splintered wood settling on a marble floor. Father Gabriel hurried down from the pulpit and knelt beside the fallen crucifix. Miraculously, the carved figure of Christ was intact, though the base was badly damaged. But as he and several parishioners carefully lifted the cross to set it aside, something caught his eye. Behind where the crucifix had stood was a narrow wooden panel, slightly ajar. It was built into the wall of the altar itself, hidden from view for who knows how many decades. The panel looked as though it hadn't been touched in generations. Dust coated the edges, and the wood was darker than the surrounding wall. The congregation watched in breathless silence as Father Gabriel reached forward and slowly pulled the panel open. It creaked loudly, as if protesting after years of undisturbed rest. Inside, in the dim light, something gleamed. It was a small, ornate box made of silver, tarnished with age but still beautiful. Beside it lay a rolled parchment, tied with a faded red ribbon. Father Gabriel's hands trembled as he removed the items. The box was no bigger than a shoebox, engraved with intricate patterns of vines and crosses. On its lid was a Latin inscription, In Memoriae Sacrificii et Fidei, in memory of sacrifice and faith. Father Gabriel gently opened it. Inside, wrapped in a piece of linen, was a simple wooden rosary, its beads worn smooth by countless fingers, and a small gold locket. He opened the locket to find a faded miniature portrait of a young woman holding a child. The faces were delicate, full of life, though the colors had softened with time. A murmur ran through the congregation. No one had ever seen these objects before. With care, Father Gabriel untied the ribbon for the parchment and unrolled it. The handwriting was elegant, though the ink had faded. He began to read aloud, his voice shaking. To whoever finds this, know that it belongs to Maria Alvarez, a humble daughter of Valverde, who in the year of our Lord 1863 gave her life to protect this church from desecration. The letter told the story of a time when the region was under threat from anti-religious forces. Soldiers had come to the town, intent on seizing the church and destroying its holy objects. Maria, then only 19, had hidden the rosary and locket, her most treasured possessions, behind the altar, vowing that they would remain there as a testament to faith and sacrifice. She had been captured and ordered to reveal the hiding place, but she refused. The letter recounted her final words before she was taken away. The cross stands, and so will my faith. Maria was executed days later. As Father Gabriel finished reading, the church was utterly silent. Many in the congregation were weeping openly, some for Maria's bravery, others because they realized she had been part of their own family histories. An elderly woman in the third pew, Senora Velasquez, raised her hand. Her voice trembled. Maria Alvarez was my great-grandmother's sister. We always knew she died for her faith, but we never knew the full story. Her words broke whatever composure remained. The sound of quiet sobbing filled the sanctuary. Even the younger ones, who had never heard of Maria, felt the weight of her courage. After Mass, Father Gabriel met with the parish council. It was unanimously decided that Maria's rosary, locket, and letter would be placed in a glass display case near the altar, so future generations could see them and be inspired. The crucifix would be repaired and returned to its place, but the panel behind it would remain accessible, with a small plaque telling Maria's story. News of the discovery spread quickly beyond Valverde. Within weeks, pilgrims from nearby towns, and eventually from across the country, came to see the items for themselves. Many prayed before Maria's rosary, asking for her intercession. Others came simply to honor her memory. There were reports of small graces and answered prayers, which only deepened the devotion surrounding her story. One evening, long after the last pilgrim had left, Father Gabriel sat in the quiet church, gazing at the repaired crucifix. He thought of how it had fallen, an accident, perhaps, but one that revealed a treasure hidden for over 150 years. He couldn't shake the feeling that it had happened for a reason. He whispered into the stillness, "Maria, you kept your faith hidden behind the cross. And now, the cross has revealed you to us." Years passed, but the story of Maria Alvarez never faded. Her courage became part of the town's identity. Children learned her story in catechism classes. Pilgrims continued to arrive, leaving flowers, candles, and sometimes their own rosaries as a sign of respect. For many, the fall of the crucifix was not an accident at all. It was a divine unveiling, a reminder that faith, no matter how deeply buried, will one day be brought to light. Among those most affected by Maria's story was Alejandro Ruiz, a young man who had long been indifferent to the faith. He had come to the church out of curiosity when the news broke, expecting nothing more than an interesting historical find. But standing before the display case, reading Maria's words, something stirred in him. He imagined the courage it took for a 19-year-old girl to face death rather than betray her faith. That night, he knelt by his bed for the first time in years and prayed, not eloquently, but honestly. It was the beginning of his journey back to God. Father Gabriel often ended his homilies with this thought. The cross fell, but in falling, it lifted us higher. Behind the wood and stone we see each Sunday, there's a history of faith, sacrifice, and love that still speaks to us. Let us not wait until the cross falls in our lives before we look deeper and see what God has hidden for us to find. If this story has touched your heart, remember, God often reveals the most beautiful treasures when something we hold dear seems to fall apart. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful faith stories, miraculous encounters, and inspiring testimonies that remind us God is always at work, even in the most unexpected ways.